Everybody, welcome to Pickleball Therapy Live. How's everyone doing today?
What's going on?
All right, let's check our tech. You got CJ and you got Tony here, and I don't know, we're going to talk a little pickleball. So we always do this. Can you hear me now?
I
Yeah.
can. I'm just
All
taking my
right.
thing off because I can't. It's not working with the headphones. So
That's okay. Jill doesn't like your headphones anyway. For those of you who don't know, Jill is Tony's wife. So she does not like Tony's headphone. Okay. All right. There we go.
I do have a
Okay.
little bit of crazy hair though.
Yep. Okay, hang on one second. I I am just checking tech. So I also just put a 10-minute moratorium on Tony to say he has to be on this 10 minutes before we go live so we can fix all these problems beforehand. All
That'd be
right.
no fun.
I know he likes that. But I'm CJ Johnson from Better Pickleball and you are
Tony Roy from the Into Pickle half of VI Pickleball with C for Better Pickleball.
exactly. So, and together we are VI Pickleball, which is an online learning community, as well as we have the Pickleball Summit, and we haven't been live since the Pickleball Summit. So we're back on schedule. We'll be here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we are back on schedule to answer your talk a little pickleball as well as answer your pickleball questions. So if you have questions, I'm over on Facebook. Tony, did you get over to YouTube? All right.
We're on.
All
We're
right.
on YouTube.
So if you have any questions, you can certainly put those in the chat. We do have a couple things that I think we're going to talk about today. But hey, before we talk about those things, what I would like to do is I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who've reached out to me. I know that many of you know that I live in Lake Tahoe, and me and my family are safe. We are actually on the northeast side of Lake Tahoe. The fire is on the southeast side of Lake Tahoe, and I told Tony if you didn't know that there was a fire burning, it's like some 25 miles away. If you didn't know it was burning, you would have no idea if you walked outside. Occasionally, we have some air quality issues, but that's really been the extent of it here on the north side of the lake. It's not true on the south side. There's some real stuff going on down there, and our hearts go out to all the people who've been impacted, as well as the firefighters who are working so valiantly. I mean, South Lake's a community of 22,000 people in a pretty small space, and they are just working valiantly to save structures. And so far, so good. Our own, Jana Spano, Jana has a home in South Lake, and so I haven't heard from her recently. So I hope she is well. But yeah, so thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it. It's really nice to know how much all of you care, and so that's cool. Thank you. All right, on to more frivolous stuff. Away from the serious stuff. Let's talk some pickleball. And we're happy to answer any of your questions. So make sure you go ahead and put them into the chat. What do you want to talk about?
I'm wearing my more chill pickleball shirt tonight. So you just kind of just purple pickleball shirt. It's kind of cool. It has all these people on it. It's pretty neat. Pretty cool design.
Those are people. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
there's
see
like
the people now.
you see the people in there.
I
Kind of cool,
do.
right? Kind of like cutouts of people playing pickleball. Kind of neat.
Oh, that's pretty neat with the yellow.
Yeah.
So you dressed up for
Yeah.
tonight.
I did. I did. I didn't shave though, and my hair's a mess. But that's life.
I hear ya. I hear. We have some really exciting stuff coming your way. We've kind of been on hiatus, like I said, because right after the pickleball summit, which was fantastic. Thanks again to everybody who contributed to that. Hope you enjoyed it. But we needed a little break. But part of that is we really didn't take a break. There's something else that we had been working on. We've actually been working on this for how long? Much of the year.
Yeah, a bit. I mean, it's been. I mean, listen, just same way pickleball is a growth experience for players, right? As instructors, CJ and I are always growing as instructors and as thinkers about the game. And so, as we progress as well as instructors and thinkers about the game, we our objective at the end of the day, our objective is to help pickleball players who want to improve in as much as they want to, right? So we use the phrase, be the best pickleball player you can be. It may be more like be the best pickleball player you can and want to be, right? Really, because, we're not trying to force anybody to become, the next Simone or Ben Johns or something like that, right? But, what we want to do is we want to be facilitators and be be of assistance, right, to players, both inside VI Pickleball and outside VI Pickleball in terms of, players who want to. That's why we keep our channels going, and we keep on providing the content on the channels, right? We do the podcast, we do all this stuff because we want to help, right? And as we progress through that, we, we try and think of ways to provide the information and to segment the information in useful ways for players to add to their games. And for instance, one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about the 3 pillars of pickleball. That's a way that we've been thinking about the game and again, segmenting the game in a way that's hopefully useful to players. And that's part of this process, right? Part of this process is as you sit down and I can tell you, I can go out and watch you play, and I can tell you, okay, fix this, let's do that, person to person, right? But in terms of thinking of pickleball as a process from the first serve to the last shot of a game, how do we get a player to within the confines of that? How do we get a player to move in that area, improve in that area as much as they want to? And that's really what it's been. It's been a fantastic process. And CJ and I have been working hard on it, and still working hard at it. And so that's been the process. It's been a long process, but it's been really, really good. So.
And so one of the things that we've been doing with this is the basis of it is getting you results faster. And helping you, as Tony said, helping you to be the best player that you can be. We've learned a lot in the last year in VI Pickleball about coaching online, and we continue to refine our coaching methods and learn from. We learn some from our students as well as what works well for them and what works well for the masses. And so we continue to tweak and play with things to make it ever better and better. But the success path that we've been working on and the 3 pillars that you're going to hear us talking a lot about are, I think they're going to be really foundational to your success as a player. So, Tony, why don't you want to start out, because I don't see any questions yet. I'm looking over on Facebook. Don't see any questions over here yet. Doesn't mean they won't come.
Yeah, same here.
But why don't you
taking questions, and we're definitely taking questions. So feel free to ask on both, and we'll get to those in a second. But let me frame this out, because here's the thing. So like when one of the things that if you follow CJ and myself for the last couple of years, one of the things a common topic that you'll hear us talking about is I use the term red herring. CJ likes the term like squirrel or shiny object, and it's pickle. And let me digress for 1 second. So CJ and I were talking the other day about content, right, and like content delivery and stuff like that. And I was mentioning how like ESPN's televising cornhole, and I have nothing against the game cornhole. I've played it. It's like horseshoes, whatever. I mean, those are great. They show consistency in your motion and your technique, right? But when you look at cornhole, and I'm not a cornhole expert, right? I watched it. I did watch an hour of it when I was just enthralled in it. But when you think of cornhole, right? You think of like the way you can slide a beanbag or drop it, or there's different techniques, right? There's X number of techniques, right? Whatever. When you look at a pickleball game or how you play pickleball, there's just so many more variables involved in playing pickleball. Even looking at it from just hitting the ball, right? Just hitting a forehand, right? A forehand ground stroke. In pickleball, in cornhole, you're holding the beanbag. I think it's called beanbag in your hand, and you're standing at a line, and you're always going to be the same height, right? Pretty much, and you can toss it the same way every time. There's really not wind because they at least the tournament I saw was indoors. So it's kind of controlled circumstances. Everything's pretty controlled. The only thing that might change is whether somebody's blocking or something like that. But your technique in throwing it is going to be, you're trying to do it pretty much the same way on maybe two different techniques. In pickleball, right? What type of ball are you playing with? What surface are you playing on? How high is the ball bouncing? Is it humid out? Not humid out? Altitude, like where CJ is? Or are you playing down in Florida where I am? Is the ball moving to your left? There's all sorts of variables just in hitting a single ground stroke. Include the variables of, okay, what's your partner like? What's this opponent like? What's this opponent like? Because you're playing two opponents normally, right? So, two players. So better here, who's better there? Where are they standing, right? I mean, there's variables in pickleball. And what happens is, and when you want to improve in the game, it can become overwhelmed, right? So there's all this information out there. There's our videos. There's a lot of other good videos. A lot of frankly crappy videos out there, right? That are just in crappy information that's just not helpful to you. But how do you shape that, right? So what we've done is we said, okay, let's basically break the game down, or break a relation to the game down into three areas. And so we'll call them the three pillars, basically, to kind of visual of it. And the three pillars in the and I'll give you the overriding sense. The three pillars are the mechanical pillar, the thinking pillar, and the athletic pillar. Okay. The first pillar is, I want to say it's the most basic, but don't take it that way. It's not meaning that it's less important than the others. But the first pillar is, mechanical pillar is the how-to. So that's basically, how do I hit the ball? How do I swing the paddle to make contact with the ball? How do I move on the court? Not where do I go? How do I move? What's the proper way to move? Think of like the split step. The split step is a tool, right? It's basically it's a movement tool that you use to, particularly to move to the transition zone, and it's to basically set yourself up for the next ball to have the best chance of hitting the next shot. So the mechanical pillar basically says, okay, let's look at those types of things here in the mechanical pillar. Then the next pillar is, and this is the one I think that a lot of players maybe need to spend more time on, or don't spend enough time on, and this is where a lot of the errors occur. There's errors on the mechanical side. A lot of the errors occur here. This is the thinking pillar, or the conceptual pillar, which is basically, I know how to hit the ball, right? So I know how to hit my third shot, or how to hit the ground stroke. But the next question is, what's the right shot to hit, right? So what shot do I hit in this particular situation? And it can be difficult, because these decisions you need to make, and these are real-time decisions, right? The first pillar, the mechanical pillar, is something that, and what I forgot to mention was, the mechanical pillar is where you spend your time with drills, right? So you're doing drills, whether it's against the wall, ghost drills at home, working with a partner. That's mechanical. You're working on muscle memory. You're getting the muscles to do the same thing over again, so that when you get on the court, you don't have to think about it. The conceptual pillar involves what CJ and I do a lot of inside DA Pickleball, which is game study, right? Watching rallies and how they, so you have an understanding of how this type of shot impacts here, how this type of shot works here. And then you start understanding when you're playing, okay, I see what's developing on the court. And we talk about it in terms of like seeing the game, right? Seeing the game means you're seeing how the game is developing as you're playing it. That allows you to play the most optimal game on your side, and to avoid giving openings, I should say, to the other team. It also helps you identify openings in the other team. In other words, weakness in how they're playing. Because if you know what you're supposed to do, right, in an X situation, and you see them doing something different, your opponent's doing something different, then you say, oh, wait a minute, I know what you're doing wrong, and I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's a super important part of the game. So that's the second pillar. That's the thinking pillar. And then the third pillar, I think I'm doing this right in terms of left or right. Maybe I went the wrong way. But the third pillar is the athletic pillar. And this one is really, it's been a learning experience for me. CJ comes from more of she's a personal trainer. She has more background, and has thought more about this part of just life, and golf and skiing and other activities that CJ, and pickleball, that CJ is involved in. But the athletic pillar, right, is what CJ and I say, is we say, if you're going to be a pickleball player, right, and you're playing, not playing once every 3 months, you're playing, pretty frequently. It's helpful, we think, to think of yourself not just as a pickleball player, and there's nothing wrong with pickleball players. That's perfectly fine. People who play socially and just want to go out there and bat the ball around. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're serious about the game, and I would suggest if you're, I don't know what time it is where you are at 7 o'clock in my area. If you're at 7 o'clock, you're watching us on YouTube Live or Facebook Live. You're watching this later. You're more serious about the game than a pickleball player. Then go ahead and take the plunge, and you're a pickleball athlete. And that word's really important. Athlete word's really important because it really says, okay, it's a mindset thing, right? You're basically saying, I'm going to do certain things. The mental part of the game, I'm going to think about my balance, stability, things like that. I'm going to look at my physical condition, right? I'm going to nutrition, hydration. I mean, there's other aspects of playing pickleball. You can be the best pickleball player in the world, but if you go out on the pickleball court and you become the, I don't care who you are, you're not gonna perform at your best level. You've drilled for a million hours on whatever. You've studied all the game tape. You go out there and play. You're dehydrated. You're done. So that's part of being a pickleball athlete, right? And thinking about the yourself and your relationship to pickleball as more than knowing how to hit the ball, very important, the mechanical, understanding what to do when, very important, the conceptual. Pickleball athlete. Now you're bringing it all together as an athlete, and that's really what's going to let you get to where you want to get to. So these pillar ideas are basically a way to segment out in your mind what you need in order to get to where you want to go, and it's also helped CJ and I building this. I think we're calling it success path or pickleball path. It's a path. It's a path that's going to basically help you get from point A to point B, and then if you want to keep going, you go to point C, point D, all the way to the benchmark 4.0. You want to know what that is? Ask us the question and we'll answer it. So.
And one thing that I want to throw in and one thing that I want to add here is the pillars are not necessarily separate. It's not like, okay, I have to finish the mechanical pillar, I have to finish then I go on to the thinking pillar, and then I go on to the athleticism pillar. That's not necessarily, it's not like you have to finish one pillar at a time. They're intertwined. So as an example, even though you might be new to the game, you're brand new, but you fall in love with it, as many of us did. We started playing probably 3 hours a day when we went out 4 times, 3-4 times a week. I mean, that's I know that's what I did, and that's also what I hear from many of you. And if you're not doing something to warm up, chances are really good you're going to hurt yourself. Okay, I mean, if you go from 0 to 60 in terms of athletics without doing something to give your body a chance, especially for like most of you or many of you are in our age group, which is over 50, you're asking for problems. Period. You're asking to sit on the sidelines. So there are times where you would be working on some of these mechanical things, but you would also incorporate some of the athleticism. An athlete would never go out and try their sport without preparing their body. Yet you see it all the time on the pickleball courts. Hey, Tony, come on, chop, chop. What's going on here? Let's go. And like I said, it's just a recipe for disaster. So that's what we're super excited about. And we'll be talking our videos. When you see our videos coming up on YouTube, we'll be talking about these pillars and separating them out, telling you when we're working on a mechanical pillar or a thinking pillar or athleticism pillar, and how these intertwine into the variety of skills. One thing I want to add on that, Tony and I were talking about this as we're preparing. We're supposed to be having some pickleball camps here in Lake Tahoe. Our first one was canceled. It was actually supposed to start next Tuesday. So our first one was canceled, but we still have a few more coming up, and we may be able to hold those. But as we're talking about our schedule for our camps, not just these camps, but we'll have camps next in January down in Tampa, where Florida, where Tony's at. As we were talking about that, we're talking about how these intertwine, how the mechanics intertwine, and how the movement of the body complements or can detract from the movement of a paddle or an arm, and how you sometimes separate those out and put them back together. Tony, talk just a second. It was a video you had up. We sent it out to the email list last Saturday. It wasn't a new video. We sent it out to the email list because for some specific reasons, but it was the step hit video, which just has gotten so many comments. But talk a little bit about that, how that fits into the pillars and the impetus when you
Sure.
made that video.
Can you hear me okay with this mic? I changed my mic because some people on YouTube said they couldn't hear me that well. So hopefully, Emily, let me know if you can hear me better with this. I changed my mic to this thing. Hopefully it'll work better. We're having
I,
a little bit of
I,
a connection issue.
I can tell you it's coming through. It sounds like it's coming through better to me. I thought it was your internet connection that was cutting out, but I'm guessing it was your mic. So,
Yeah, something weird happened there. Anyway, so the step hit idea is this: if you have to think of yourself as having 2 points of contact with pickleball, right? With the game. One is your hand, and CJ, I never have a paddle when we do these things, but your hand holding a paddle, right? And, um, and actually, I get Jill to bring it in. She just got home. She got rained out, so I'll bring the diadem and show it to you. But basically, your hand holds the paddle, right? Paddle intersects ball or hits ball. That's 1 point of contact that you as a player have with the game. The other point of contact you as a player have with the game are your feet, right? Your feet on the court is the other point of intersection. There's really no other contact between you and this game, right? So what you need to do is you need to make sure that that from your feet, right, which are on the court, all the way to the paddle, has a meaningful connection, and that it makes sense what's happening, right? So your feet, right, feet to court as one part, right? That's basically moving around the court. Right? How do I move? Two, where am I supposed to be? That's the thinking pillar, right? So you work on both those. And then you work on from foot to shoulder, right? That's where the step hit comes in, and I'll explain in a second. But basically, foot to shoulder is the second piece you need to consider. If I have the most beautiful swing in the world, but my body's jerking around like this, right? Then the paddle's going to be going all over the place, and it doesn't matter how good my swing is. And then the third piece of it is shoulder to paddle, right? Shoulder to paddle is what we think about as the swing, which starts with the backswing, goes to the follow through. You talk about shoulder versus elbow and wrist, things like that when you talk about shoulder to paddle. So the step hit video, or the step hit concept is, and it's a mistake that I make. That's why I'm so attuned to it, right? What happens is we're hitting the ball, and as we're hitting the ball, right, we're moving. So basically, we're basically like moving as we're hitting, as opposed to doing it. Basically, it's like a 3-part dance. It's move, hit, move. Now it happens pretty fluid, right? But there's still there's a brief separation between the 3 different things, because if you're moving while you're hitting, you just won't have as much control, because eventually it's going to break down. There's too many moving parts, right? So you want to have a good control over that, and that's basically a way of breaking mechanics in a way that's productive. Because if you don't break it down that way, it's really hard to fix that problem.
I was just typing an answer, and it is your internet connection. Your internet connection just stinks tonight. Sorry, guys. Sorry, it does. All right. So if you didn't, and I have to tell you, so it was really interesting. I hadn't seen that video. That video was an older video on Tony's channel, and he oh yeah, now you're coming through. It was an older video on Tony's channel, so I hadn't seen that video. So when we were getting ready to send it out, I stopped and I watched it. And I happened to go, I was out hitting some balls, I don't know, a night or two afterwards. And I just made sure to check myself. And because I know that's one of the things that I can do too, especially if I'm not playing a lot of pickleball, my footwork gets sloppy. I get very flat footed. And like Tony said, I kind of run into the ball and put a lot of energy into the ball. So that's kind of what we're trying to tie in. Oh, look at that. You got it back. She didn't want to give it up, did she? Now I can't hear you.
Nope,
Okay.
nope. She wanted.
Okay.
I know that was me. She wanted. She was playing tonight, so hers just got here. So I got this one back. This is mine, Megan again. So.
Oh, so hers did get here because she doesn't like the Miami Vice.
No.
Show the Miami Vice. You kind of put it down very quick. I think the Miami Vice is kind of. I think the Miami Vice is kind of cool. And then you got palm trees on the other side, right? I mean, that's very Florida.
They're based in South Florida, so it makes sense.
Yeah, very Florida. So anyway, that is you're gonna hear as we keep talking about and in launching our videos, just as we consistently do that, you're gonna hear us talking about those three pillars: the mechanical, the thinking pillar, and then the athleticism pillar. So just another thing to help you to be more successful, to take what we teach you. Tony, we got a couple of questions. You ready for a couple of questions?
Yep.
Yes? All right. So
And
let's
I have
see.
a couple on my end too. We're going to answer. So
Well, I think I'm looking at you. So I think I can um, look at.
I have
Uh,
James and Terry have a question.
all right. So why don't you go ahead with James first?
James says, how do you keep from putting the ball too high? And that's a really interesting question. And we actually have a video on that. I got to figure out the name of it, the video, but we just published a video on that I think you'll find interesting, James, in terms of the height of the ball. Look it up. But basically, it's really the bigger concern isn't height. The bigger concern is depth, right? How deep your ball is going. And so, and maybe just recall that. Give me a second. But basically, um, yeah, it's avoid getting slammed too high or too deep. I think it's our current video right now. We're publishing another one tonight, but anyway, check that one out. But basically, you think of your shot trajectory um, as being driven by the amount of energy that you impart into the ball. And one of the easiest ways to kind of rein that in, right, to have a to be able to better determine how much energy you're imparting into the ball is to control your swing and to maintain a compact swing. The more compact your swing, the more able you'll be to control the amount of energy that you're imparting into the ball. The more I bring the paddle back, right? So if I take this diadem paddle, right, and I pull it back like this, if I'm hitting the ball up here, it's going to be really hard for me to stop the amount of energy that I'm imparting into this ball. If I start my swing here, that's going to be easier to control how much energy I'm importing to the ball. So backswing is probably the biggest contributor to pop-ups and shots just going higher and deeper than you want them to, going farther than you want them to. Grip pressure you can also use, but grip pressure is more tweaker. You can tweak it with that, like it's a fine-tuned thing. The backswing is really the big one. So hopefully that helps you with that.
I have to tell you, this is kind of funny because I just got back. I ran over and shoot. Tony knows this. I ran over to shoot a video really quick, and so we got a serve video going up on Saturday. And literally, I have 45 minutes to get the video shot and get back to my house so that I can be on for this. So it's like, okay, everything needs to go perfect. And if you've ever shot any video, you pretty much know it usually doesn't. So I'm shooting these serves, and they are just going wild long. And so I had to just stop for a second because I turned on the camera and just started shooting, hit a couple serves. I'm like, oh, okay, what's happening here? So I just stopped for a second. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Well, yeah, I have this huge, and which happens to me. That's my tendency, not just in tennis. It was also my tendency in golf, is to have a really long backswing. I'm very mobile in the shoulder joints. I'm very loose. I'm very flexible. I'm very mobile in the shoulder joints. So, yes, the swing was really long. So the serves were really flying. So it's like, okay, make them shorter, less energy on the ball. And I did manage to get it shot in 45 minutes. so,
That's good. That's good. Oh, the
so,
other thing I was going to say, CJ, I forgot is that, well, not forgot, but like backswing, right? But the other way you import energy is sometimes it's a step hit thing. Basically, your whole body's coming into the shot as you're hitting, right? So what happens is you have whatever your body weight is. Think of the energy you're transferring from your body weight through the arm that we talked about earlier into the paddle. That's going to also drive that ball farther than you want. The most control you can have on the shot is to basically, if you have your body still and you're just basically having a really compact swing, you'll have more control over your so. And I had a second question here, CJ, unless you have one on yours.
go ahead. No, or I'm just chatting
Barry
with.
asked what that's fine. Barry asked what the three pillars are. We've already answered that. I think, Barry, if you have any questions on the pillars, certainly put us in there. Barry's a VI Pickleball member and just all around great guy from North Carolina. Terry says, do you ever use flat spot markers in training? If so, how? I think you mean those dots, those like flat dots that you place on the court. Those are really good for training. You can use it anytime you need a target to aim at. What's really nice about them is you can use them also when you're a training partner and you're working through the zone or whatever, because you're not going to trip over them. So they're really helpful. The only time that they're not as helpful if you're training like really a long distance, like say like a serve or something like that, if you can't see it. Like if you can see it, that's fine, right? But if you can't see it, then it's not going to help you. You need the visual target for your brain to focus on. So that's the only area that where sometimes it won't work as well. But yeah, if you watch any of our drills videos when Jill and I are training, like whether it's El Zorro, literally like the show El Zorro on the Into Pickle channel, you'll see we're using those dots in there and aiming for the dots. So they're really really helpful in training.
And I would tell you kind of my general rule of thumb. I follow it along with Tony. Is that I use the flat dots at the non volley zone, and I like the ones you can get them with a number on them. And if you don't want to use the number, you can just flip it over just to have a plain dot. But the nice one on the number is you can do a lot of drills where you or your partner are calling out numbers, so you have to redirect shots to different places. Or you could just say, okay, here's the purpose of this drill. This goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, whatever it may be, the pattern that you're training. And then for the longer distances, I use the cones. I like it's just a small cone and they sit on a rack. And one of the things that I like to do with cones as well is I'll set balls on top of it with the objective of hitting balls off the cone. So if I'm practicing return of serves to a certain spot, that's my objective, is to hit that ball off the cone, which is a pretty it's a pretty small target. It doesn't usually happen like the first two shots. It takes a couple more. It may take a couple more shots to hit that. It's also good for when you're practicing depth of serve, depth of return, like Tony said.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you a little bit. The visual to me is a little easier. And here's the one thing I want to say, because this is in the athleticism pillar. We also talk about mindset, and that's something we do a lot inside of VI Pickleball. I mean, we did a whole book study. It took us literally, what was it? We started in December and we finished in July. We were studying Coach Pete's book, mental and emotional training for tennis, and it may say tennis in the title, but it's just as applicable to pickleball. But we're talking about mental training, and that falls in the athleticism pillar. So one of the ways that you do train mentally is to have a visual target out there while you're training. Now you may not be thinking, I'm going to hit that target. As an example, if you're practicing a deep serve or a deep return and you have two of these cones, depending upon how proficient you are at 4 or 3 or 2 feet from the middle of the court, from the court to the baseline, just by having those cones out there, you're mentally training. You're mentally thinking of them. That's putting a picture into your mind. Our mind works in pictures. That's how our brain works. Is our brain works in pictures. And the more pictures I can create, whether it's cones or those dots, like Tony said, watch the El Zorro drill on Tony's channel, and work those dots. That really sticks with you the next time you're out on the court and I'm across from Tony and I'm thinking about where that next dink goes. I can visualize that dot. I have, because I've done it, right? I've prepared my mechanical pillar because I've been practicing the technique, but I'm also working on that athleticism pillar because I've got the visual from the targets that I'm using. So I think targets are super super important whenever you are practicing. Have something out on the court.
Can't agree more.
Cool. Let's see. What? Oh, so Orlena is on. We were chatting. I think she said, I'm going to
What's
say
up,
that.
Orlana?
I think she probably says hello. I didn't realize she's been out. She has been out since the U.S. Open. She's had a frozen
Oh, no
shoulder, but
kidding.
yep,
Oh no.
yeah. But she said she thinks she's coming. She's getting better, and she hopes to be back on the court soon. But she wanted to know, what do you think of Morgan Evans' serve?
That's a great question. Love the question, Orlana. What do I think of Morgan Evers? So I've never had to return it, but apparently it is very difficult to return. Some of the videos, I think, a little, I don't say misleading, but like I saw some of the serves that he hit that people couldn't return, and there were some like high level players. My guess is once they see it a couple of times, they'll be able to figure it out. Some of the players that I saw not being able to hit his return, I don't know who they are. Maybe they're high level players. I just don't know who they are. But they were having trouble with it. Um, it's hard to say, Orlando, because it's not illegal, right, to do, and uh, we all try and play the game as advantageously to us as possible, right? So like, if you look at like Ben John's roll volley, right, it's the best in the game. Um, and so that's a shot that he has, right? That not many other players have. Riley Newman's hand speed, right? Hard to beat. Dave Weinbach's hand speed, hard to beat. So there's I think eventually they're probably going to do something about it. It'd be my guess, especially if as it starts to migrate. I've seen local players starting to do it. Some, going to like spin it on the paddle and flick it up and stuff like that. So I haven't seen anything as extreme as Morgan serve, but I don't know. I mean, I think one of the beauties of our game, in my view, is one of the beauties of our game is that you can use the serve. You can use the serve offensively, but it's not as deciding a factor as it is in a sport like tennis. And so tennis has become a sport where, like, if you have a really, really, really big serve, you can get through a lot of matches that you otherwise couldn't get through just because you have a really, really big serve. And so I'm hoping that we won't get to that in pickleball, because then it'll just become a serve fest, and you'll be spending 60% of your time working on your serve and 40% of your time working on the rest of the game. And that's one thing I like about pickleball, is that you have all these different ways to do it. Quickly, Felicity had a question.
One
Yeah,
of the
go ahead, sorry.
I wanted to add something really quick. I don't know if you saw it going around. So Zane Navratil posted some stats, and I just went through them really briefly. And one of the things that he said is, yes, initially when some of the serves came out, that there was a decrease in people had a hard time returning them, but just like Tony said, once they got a look at them, the pros were able to adjust to those serves. I would tell you this is if you're listening to this and you're not a pro, there are probably a host of other shots that would help your pickleball game a lot more than being able to replicate a Zane Navratil or a Morgan Evans serve. And if you spent more time on those, you're going to win more rallies, which means you're ultimately going to win more game, because we only have a limited amount of time out on the pickleball courts. So if you can get a serve in and you can get a serve deep consistently, I'd say focus on the other things first. Now, if you've got all the other shots in your games, or just you want to play that serve, to rock out. But I think there's better ways to spend your time, or more beneficial ways. Let's put it that way. All right.
I'm trying to find the El Zorro video, CJ, and now I can't find it because people have asked for it. I'm just like, jeez. I know that. Anyway, we had some changes to some of the titles to the videos, and so El Zorro has come off the titles. Now I gotta find it.
It has. Oh, how's anyone going to find it if that's how it? Because that's how
Yeah.
we think about it. That's how we think about it. So he's taking a look for that. We will take any questions that you have as well. So if you've got a few more questions while Tony is looking for that, I think one of the other things that we saw, which it was interesting, how do you get on the email list? You can go to, right now, we are just about to flip the switch on our brand new website. Brandy new. Oh, and we're going to have this cool pickleball quiz on it. Oh my goodness. It is like super duper cool. But we haven't yet. So if you wanted to get on the email list, you can still go to cjjohnsonglobal.com. Put a /31, the number 31 tips, TIPS, and you can get on the email list. So again, cjjohnson, JOHNSON, global.com /31 tips, and you can get on the email list. We're about to make things a lot less complicated. It has taken us. We formed this partnership a year ago, and so we had two separate businesses and many things we are combining into one. Don't worry, we're still going to have two separate YouTube channels. That won't change. So those will still be going, but the website, hopefully that changes in like 2 days. I did want to make a comment because I think it's really interesting. There's been two things that I saw on Facebook, both in the can I put that address in the chat? I will. I definitely will. And Leon says, I wish all the balls were uniform like in tennis. Too many differences. Totally agree. We had that discussion with Edward Hector from Pickleball Central during the Pickleball Summit about a uniform ball. Maybe someday. But I did want to discuss something real quick that I saw going back. And I don't know if you saw this, Tony, because you and I didn't talk about it. There's a gal, Jill Braverman, has started to GoFundMe. Did you see that? For the Jill Braverman started to GoFundMe, and with the idea that this GoFundMe, the goal was to raise, I think, $100,000, and it was to supplement the winnings for, I think, like 5th through 9th place. I may have the details of that wrong, and if I do, please excuse me. But it was to supplement that. And I think, I was reading the comments. I kind of never chimed in, but I think her intentions were in the right place. But I will tell you this: as somebody who came from who came from golf, so I'm 58 years old, and when I was a young golf professional, about the top 20 to 25 women in the world made a decent living playing golf. And I was not one of the top 20 or 25 in the world, and I needed to find another way to make a living. So I like I said, I just thought that was interesting in terms of a GoFundMe.
Like you say, GoFundMe
Yeah.
to pay.
A GoFundMe to pay the pros so that they can make a better living. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That and again, I'm not railing on Jill. I've only seen what's gone on in the comments. I think it's cool that she believes in something and that she took a stand. But I also will say that when a sport gets to, so interestingly enough, what I did is I looked back. I was trying to look at the money winners in 1989. That's when I first turned professional. It was 1999, and Betsy King was the leading money winner at that time. She made $674,000. But again, like the top 10 made a pile of money, and then there's this big drop off to like the next 10, and then after that it was like poof. In 1990, my best friend was the leading money winner on what it was called the Futures Tour at the time, and it didn't have an exemption to the LPGA. She was a CPA by trade, and that year she made $24,000 as the leading money winner on the Futures Tour. Traveling around the country doing that. So I think that now I checked the leading money winner on the LPGA Tour. Last year made just under $2 million. So things change, and there's more opportunities certainly on the LPGA Tour because it's grown. And I think at some point in time, pickleball will grow as well. But even in tennis, you look at tennis. There's a lot of tennis professionals. You see the big ones. You see the Sloane Stephens and the Rogers and the Djokovic and things like that. But there's a lot of tennis pros, good players who aren't making money. And tennis is certainly I guess a more popular sport, at least at this point in time. Not saying pickleball won't overtake it, but yeah,
it's more commercially viable for sure right now. So.
Yep, exactly. CJ,
I figured out what was wrong with my head. Just noticed that the plug had gotten loose. Oh well.
Yeah, Barry said it. Endorsements can pay the bills. Yeah, when I was a young, that's how you had to get out there. Was you had to go around and you had to look for sponsorships, and basically you were just looking for people to help you out. I mean, they might take a small percent of your earnings. That's if you earned anything. I will tell you this, it's one of the things that's made me pretty good at that mental pillar. You know, when you know that this putt stands between you and like eating or traveling for a couple of weeks, it does put a whole new level of pressure on your mind and your stroke and what happens to your body and things like that. So it is very different, and I'm very grateful for that experience. But yeah, it is different place. All right, Tony, it looks
It's
like
all the
we
questions on YouTube.
and it looks like
When's
and
our
so
next When's our next pickleball therapy live? So we'll know. Is it
every
next
Thursday.
week?
Every Thursday. You got it.
Every
And
Thursday?
actually, crossing fingers. Oh, crap.
Thursday?
You're flying in next Thursday.
Unless you want me to do it from a flight.
You're going to be on the airplane. You're going to be on the airplane. We didn't
En el
think of that.
avión, like we would say.
We didn't think of that.
I
We
think the
didn't.
airplane trumps the
Well,
date
yeah,
time of the
yeah. Well, you have to get on
free
the
live.
airplane. So we may not do a pickleball therapy live next Thursday. After that, we're going to do it
Well, we can do it
every.
on Wednesday.
We could do it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But Tony's going to be here in Tahoe, crossing our fingers that Tony is going to be able to be here in Tahoe. And um, yeah, so that'll be an exciting time.
Send us some stuff and let us know what you think about the pillars. You can send us emails at where do they send us emails?
Actually send if you want to, and if you want to get on the email list or you've got some questions, you can send it to support@wearepickleball.com.
And that's at
That's
the bottom there.
yeah,
wearepickleball.com. I see.
you got it. I want to have this. Jenna asked a really quick question. Hey Jenna, how are you? She's been out with the kids at soccer practice. How's soccer going? I hope the kids are having fun. What's the best thing to work on to move from 4 to 4-5?
I'm gonna t- I'm gonna say that listen I'm gonna give you my spiel. My spiel is this: like the best players in the world, because they do the simple things or the basic things or the fundamental things, whatever word you like, they do them better than their opponents, and they do them over and over and over again until they win. I'll give you an example. Like I'm a pretty decent player. The difference normally in my games when I'm playing other senior pros is that maybe I'm hitting 4 good dinks, but my opponent's hitting 5 good dinks. Or I'm hitting 5, they're hitting 6, right? And that's really how it. I hit 9 good third shots, they're hitting 12 good third shots, right? So during a game, so basically like that's basically how the games get um, sorted out. I will say this, however, um, normally the distinction between a 4-0 player and a 4-5 player, and even a 4-5 player and a 5-0 player, usually the difference there is a difference of pace. Um, the 4-0, a good, what we call a 4.0 player, which nobody asked the question on, so I'm not going to define it, but no, I'm just kidding. But a benchmark 4.0 player is basically a player that is well rounded and can do everything that even a pro player can do. Basically, a good benchmark or a solid 4.0 player can hit all the shots pretty much the same way that a pro player can do it. The difference is a little bit of consistency, right? But also at that level, it's an issue of pace, where there are really good 4.0 players that just can't advance because they don't have the big guns that they can bring out when they need them, and the other players do have the big guns, and so they can deploy those and overpower the good 4.0 player. So that's really normally the difference is a bit of power. Now I will say this: there are players, and actually I still need to do that game breakdown where it's a really interesting bronze medal match at nationals between two howitzers, if you know what that is, two like cannon players just firing on all cylinders, right? And two players that are, well, one player in particular who's just a very controlled, diffuse situation kind of a player, right? So a bomb diffuser and two bomb throwers, right? And it's an interesting match, 3-game match, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm not going to spoil it, so I won't tell you who won, but it wasn't the bomb throwing team. So you can win, so you can be successful at the higher levels without a lot of power. Yvonne Ting is actually a good example of that. I mean, she can put it away if you get it up high to her, like she's a badminton player, I think, so she can smack that ball. But usually, if you watch her play, she's cagier, right? She's moving the ball around, she's doing different things, you know. So,
But
but really, power is one thing, and consistency.
but I'm going to say one of the things that Yvonne does really well, and because you talk about pace, is she can control pace.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I think that's something that she can really do is she can control the pace very well. Um, and I'm going to throw this in there. So when we had Kyle Yates, certainly one of the best players on the summit, and we asked him for one tip, that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what he gave us. That's exactly what he said. Is he said the best players in the world are the best players in the world because they do the basics really well. And essentially, off camera, he said, "Stop trying to do the fancy crap." And he didn't use that word, but he used a different word. Stop trying to do the fancy stuff. Stop trying to win the points. Get consistent and do the consistency. Really focus on that on being more consistent.
If you want to see how the best players win their match, what I would suggest to you, watch one of their matches with um, but focus on not the sexy, super crazy winners, which are fun. They're fun or whatever. But just watch how they just grind and grind and grind, and that's how they win. They win by grinding their opponents down.
Yep, exactly. So she says she's a
I wish I
bomb.
could give you like a silver bullet magic shot, but there isn't one. So
There isn't. She says she's a bomb thrower, so she's working on the reset and control. There you go.
yeah, that's
There you
that's the
go.
key, right? Round out your game. That's a good way of looking at it, right? If you know what you're doing well, focus. Still, make sure you keep that as part of your game. Don't lose your identity. In the a podcast that I did or we did on stacking and whether it's right for your game, I mentioned about Roger Federer having been attacked on his backhand, right? And that's always what they attack, high to his backhand. And so they asked him about whether he were working on that. And what Federer said was, "Why would I work on that? That's not how I play how I play tennis." So what does he work on? He works on his strengths. I think it's still important to have some work on that, but don't lose sight of the type of player that you are. Your identity as a player. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we're going to be live next week. We're going to go live at some point in time, either Wednesday or probably not Thursday unless we can figure out a way for Tony to do it from the plane. Um, but and then the following week we are going to be live. We're going to try. Hopefully, we're going live with our camp participants. So we will have them on live. We're going to try and go live from the courts. Hopefully that'll work out. We'll see what'll happen. But get on our email list. We've put that in both the Facebook as well as YouTube. If you're not sure, if you missed it, just reach out to us at support@wearepickleball.com and we can get you on that email list. So, all right, as usual, my friend, it was fun. Had a good time. Love talking pickleball with you. And we will see all of you next week.
thanks,
Bye.
EJ.